Welcome you again to our next edition on sustainable economy in the EMA region. Today's topic is the reforestation of deserts, wood in the value chain and urban development. And our guests today and speakers are from the company FORLIANCE. For those who do not know yet FORLIANCE, this is a consultancy firm engaged in sustainable business, and they lend technical assistance and support in the field of planning, implementation and optimization of land use projects. They support project funding, certification strategies, business and management plan and monitoring efforts, and all this to develop climate strategies. And while FORLIANCE is quite new under this name, the EMA is looking back at a long history and collaboration with its predecessors, Forest Finance and CO2OL. And as a member of the EMA, FORLIANCE has been involved in activities in the EMA region for at least 8 years, as far as I know. Today we will talk about timber as a natural resource. Yes, wood is increasingly used as a resource in construction and where it solves two long-term problems. The first is climate change and housing space for the increasing population in our region. The demand has been increasing with up to 30% of growth even in Germany and generally all over the globe. So this makes it a very scarce commodity, and it takes longer to replenish, and so the supply is getting more and more expensive. And this means that the importance of the value chain of timber and the sustainable production of wood is increasing. The challenge lies with the logistics and know-how. And today we will talk about, amongst others, desert reforestation pilot project in Egypt. In the past, FORLIANCE has implemented 2 projects in Egypt with a study on afforestation and timber-based project, as well as the afforestation of arid areas. And the objective of this public-private partnership in Egypt was to generate additional income from wood, wooden biomass, energy crops, carbon trading, and positive environmental impacts. Surely our guest speakers today can tell us much more about the success and the sustainability of this project, which has already come to a first end, and so many more about this morning. And therefore, I would like to introduce our distinguished speakers and guests today. First of all, 𝑩𝒖𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒆𝒔𝒔 is Director of Market Intelligence and Business Development at FORLIANCE. His long expertise goes back to managing key accounts in the fields of sports, where he co-founded the Football for Forest initiatives, industry and stakeholder communication, as well as his previous position in leading communication agency for sustainability reporting. Warm welcome to you, Michael.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here this morning.
Second, Benno Fuchs. Benno Fuchs is Manager of Sales Climate Solutions at FORLIANCE. His experience extends to key account, cooperation, and project management, where he takes care of smooth processes for the clients. And at the same time, he is responsible for compensation services and advises corporate clients all the way from portfolio management to the supply with communication materials from the climate protection projects. You brought a presentation. I think that my colleagues will share the screen now. Warm welcome. You can have your presentations. Maybe the question that may arise can already be written in the chat. Otherwise, we will have a question and answer session right after your presentation. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goodroy.
Thank you as well.
So just to give you an idea of what we, Michael and I, were planning, I would love to give you a short introduction onto what we do as a company, once again, what I do, and then have Micha talk more in depth about the reforestation of the arid regions. So if we could move to the next slide, please. Our mission as FORLIANCE is in general just as the all-over idea of creating ecosystems. We want to impact positively climate, biodiversity, the human well-being, and we are fighting climate change. And in order to do so, we are working with customers, with corporates, with our partners or allies, as we rather call them, to get a financing and to support us in initiating, creating, and managing those robust, nature-based climate projects. So this is a large cooperation that we always use and that we've been doing for quite a long time. The next slide, please. We've been doing this since 1998, so more than 20 years of experience of working with corporates in all the ways of and all the ideas that are in the cosmos of climate strategies and of net zero carbon strategies. We've done it with more than 1,500 customers or partners, and have now nearly even 40 international experts sitting all over Latin America, Europe, and all over the world. Next slide, please. And this here shows what Ms. Goodroy already told us. We were formerly called the Forest Finance Consulting, or COOL, so CO2OL. So our services are basically divided in two different sections. So one section, the left one with the greenish buttons here, is rather in terms of the project development. So we've been working with KfW, GIZ, World Bank, in order to work on climate policy frameworks, on payment systems. We also do our main job here in developing climate protection projects. So we've developed one of the first gold standard climate protection projects. We developed methodologies. So we are now currently developing the official methodology of biochar, which can also be a big part in the reforestation of arid regions. So we are working with a lot of different ways of creating ecosystems, of managing ecosystems that are all in some kind of connection with just land use or nature-based solutions. And in order to get a financing of all that, we consult our partners, our allies in the climate strategy. So that means we're starting with footprinting, developing reduction measures, developing net zero carbon strategies, and in the end of that, try to help them reduce or compensate their emissions, which could not be reduced prior to that, with the projects that we developed ourselves. And the perfect aim or the perfect goal, what we're looking for, is always an insetting. And insetting is basically how we get into the Egyptian areas, into the projects, and was also one of the ideas how we got in touch with EMA, because we were asked by one of our customers or one of our interested companies if we could help them get into a climate neutral collaboration with Expo Dubai. So we talked a lot about the Expo Dubai and about trade fairs in general, because we've got lots and lots of customers from that area. But for now, we would like to rather use not the topic of the expo itself, but of the region, of the arid regions, and what we've done there so far with our nature-based projects. And that's where Micha would give you more of an idea of what we did here.
Thank you, Benno. Again, thanks for having us. Great opportunity. I hope it's not too noisy in the background. We have some construction, so everyone has some sound pollution coming from the outside somewhere. You can go to the next slide, please. As Benno has said, a big chunk of our work is basically designing and developing projects that mainly aim for restoring land or ecosystems, bringing them back to life. So, and as he has said, we have a big focus in Latin America, which is rather tropical, subtropical. It's about, degraded land that used to be forests, and then, we had cattle ranching, and we need to reforest this. But we also work in areas in Africa and the Middle East, where we have very different ecosystems, way more dry, scarcity of rain, other resources. So stretching basically from Ethiopia up to Egypt. So this is a different geography. It's a different challenge. And so it comprises an important part of our work and focus. And, we just call it the work of us in the arid regions. And as you know, I mean, you are way more familiar than we are with this area, the challenges and why it is actually so important to revitalize these areas, to make use of what there is. So, and we have been working, it was already mentioned, maybe for 10 or a little more than 10 years with a broad network of partners, GIZ, KfW, universities, Egypt partners, to basically find ways to regreen the desert and make use of it and create economic values, social values, environmental values for the societies impacted there. And not only from a climate perspective, or a strict environmental perspective, which is certainly always a very clear focus of us, but from a way more holistic perspective. So creating in a way life cycles, economic values, social values, environmental values. So having a full value chain established, starting from regreening, having resources, producing materials that one can be used maybe in construction or for other purposes, pulp and paper, for instance. So, and that's what we are focusing at, and we are a bit proud of being also at the forefront of this. So, in a bit more details on the next slide. So this has already been mentioned, one of our project cases in Egypt, Ismaila, it's called. It's a bit northeast of Cairo, if I'm not mistaken. And well, the images speak for themselves. I mean, you can see it used to be rather desert, semi-desert, and what we have tried is basically to bring it back to life. The good thing is it's usually warm. It's a subtropical region, so all you need is water. And we try to combine two things, which are also two problems. We have a bigger city which has sewage water. What are you going to do with it? You just pour it into the Suez Canal or the sea, or maybe you clean it up to a certain extent and then bring it onto the soil, which needs the water, is rather fertile, and then restart growing processes. In this case, small plantations, which might then over time grow into bigger plantations for, well, maybe growing forests, which serve various purposes, for which we will come back a bit later. But the idea is to kickstart something that creates an environmental and ecological value. So, you have something for the soil, you have something for the climate, you have something for the water cycle. You create raw materials, biomass, purpose is clear. It's timber production, it's paper, could be energy usage, with renewable. And then it goes further in the value chain in the process, basically creating timber for housing, construction, etc. Next slide, please. Here you see the chain, as it is called. I've already explained a little bit. You see on the left side, you're basically the reforesting, the tree as the main raw material, which then goes into the process, And then while we're also doing this, I mean, if you carefully listen to the news, timber, wood, forest is everywhere. If you switch on the news in Germany, for instance, it's almost on a daily basis that we talk about the plight of our forests, the dire situation in the wood industry. We have hardly any wood material. And if we have already this severe situation, one can imagine how dramatic the situation is in areas like the Middle East. So to have one of the most important construction material available. So, and that's why we thought it is a very smart idea, basically, to combine climate environmental action with economic and social activities. So, and kickstart this value cycle, basically. You can see in the lower part again, all the different, impacts and values I mentioned: ecological, social, economic. There's one little arrow to the lower side, is the part I haven't mentioned yet, and that's very important, and that's a very important part of our business. It's what we call, the carbon market. So the nice thing nowadays is that with such projects, you can not only create a value through timber and its, timber value chain, but you can also create an interesting new type of finance. Isn't that new anymore? But still, I think it's still rather innovative. So we call it carbon finance or climate finance. So as you know, every biomass, every soil type stores carbon, sucks the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and stores this. And this is of incredible value for our climate, our ecosystems, and it's something you can monetize. And that's where you see this little certificate. So basically every growing forest stores carbon. You can measure, you can model the amount of carbon, and then you can issue what's called carbon certificates, carbon credits, and you can sell it to someone who wants to balance their own footprint. Those can be companies, can be governments, can be individuals, every one of us. So it's a very innovative way of incentivizing environmental action and also financing reforestation action or kickstarting those value chains or giving an additional income to those project partners. Next slide. Yeah, this is again a little bit reduced. So this is in a nutshell what this is all about. You start with basically reforesting something. We have done this, by the way, also in Ethiopia. It's of course not really desert, but it's a very arid and dry highland area where we now for almost a decade also support and finance projects to re-green basically Ethiopian highland areas. It's the same purpose. It's a coffee growing area also, so we have an agroforestry system, a lot of community involvement, but the idea is climate protection plus social impact plus economic improvements of the livelihoods of the people there. So here in Egypt, for instance, we started with the regreening of the desert. We, over time, build up the raw material, which then can be used for various purposes, as I have mentioned. Energy, construction, pulp and paper, fiber boards, etc. So, and this is what we talk about. And it's not only, because for many people, it's often a very, let's say, one-dimensional thing. They think regreening the desert or, planting trees there serves mainly a climate or environmental purpose. This is certainly true, but this is just a single focus. No, it's more than that. It impacts everything I have said. And actually, in my view, or in our view, there is, no such thing than climate protection in itself if it's not linked to, one might say, human protection or the social cause or the economic cause. Only if we can improve social conditions and economic conditions, we will serve the climate and the environment. So this is actually part of our philosophy. And that's why we are also not an NGO. That's why we are a company. We believe in the entrepreneurial spirit. We want to incentivize economic development, social development. And we think in longer value chains and not only in, let's say, planting trees. So maybe one slide more, I think, and then I'm almost through and we can jump to the questions. In a nutshell, why is this all so important, what we do? And why is it so important that we talk about this? A few just points. We use the water. It's always an issue. What we're going to do with this. We can create biomass for various purposes. And I have additionally mentioned there because I didn't before, besides timber or any wood products, oil crops, very important. Cooking, cosmetics, energy usage. So jatropha, big thing sometimes, jojoba, cosmetics. So this is an additional income. And speaking of income, I just again want to highlight an emphasis. This is what this is all about, whether it is carbon, whether it's an oil crop, whether it's timber, wood, whatever it is about creating additional income for the people who live there, work there. So windbreaks, of course, it's an environmental thing, greening with salt, water, climate, shade for sheep and camels, erosion control, etc. But at the end, it's about social impact and economical perspectives. And of course, if you want to put this into an even bigger scheme of things, then it is, of course, also to give people a perspective who live there. Maybe think about leaving the regions where they live, migrate. We understand that the work we do, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in very poor areas of Ethiopia, whether it's in very poor areas in Latin America, it is about giving people, communities, a perspective to stay there, to improve their livelihoods, their work, their countries, and maybe not seeking the fortunes elsewhere, to improve their countries, their regions, which we think is, from a also geopolitical perspective, a very important aspect not to forget. And with this, I close. I think we have enough time to talk, for questions, and the floor is yours, is open, and I'm happy to answer questions, discuss, and looking forward to that. Many thanks.